Okay, we welcome back in Paul Finebaum. I said welcome back in because I feel like I just talked to you about this, and I indeed did just yesterday, Paul. So let's revisit this now after we've heard from Lane in Baton Rouge. How do you think he looks after his first introductory press conference?
I truly believe that's one of the most fraudulent things I've ever heard from a head football coach. I don't know what I am making. I asked my agent not to tell me. Nobody believes that because everybody in America knows what Lane Kiffin is making. It's been reported in every publication, on every broadcast, that he could make $12 million from the 3 schools going after him. So Lane, don't try to con all of us like you've tried to con some of us in the process, that you're doing the right thing, that you're trying to get the Nobel Peace Prize because you care so much about your players at Ole Miss, which you've just abandoned as they're trying to get to a playoff for the first time in history. So it's a great story. It sounds good, but it is pure balderdash. And I'm sorry, I just don't buy almost anything that Lane Kiffin says anymore.
Stephen A?
No, go ahead, CC. I want to hear what CC has to say first before I turn my attention to Paul Finebaum. Go ahead.
Yeah, taking the LSU job is about as close as Lane Kiffin is going to get to Alabama and Nick Saban. This was the next best thing because that program had no interest in him, even though he's made overtures when Tuscaloosa had a job opening a couple of years ago when Saban stepped down. This was the next best thing, but make no mistake about it, this is Lane Kiffin going after the bigger, better deal as he's done throughout the entirety of his coaching career. And I'm not surprised by it. The thing that bothers me about yesterday's press conference is that he won't keep it a buck. And saying that he doesn't know what his contract is, how could you be more disingenuous than that? I'm pretty sure that he knows that Jimmy Sexton built in a $7 million escape hatch if and when he decides he wants to leave for the next job that he perceives to be better off than the one that he currently has. Why don't you just come out and say that LSU has more resources, they have more money to offer at NIL, and I believe in the sustainability of that program more than at Ole Miss because I can buy better talent. Just say that. People might not like it, but at least everybody can respect it and understand where you're coming from. But to sit here and give off this facade as if you were going to be allowed to coach the postseason when it would have been in direct conflict with the interest of Ole Miss as you're going to be a head coach at a program that is a direct competitor of theirs is just absolutely ridiculous.
Well, we have no disagreement amongst the three of us about how idiotic Lane Kiffin looked yesterday. You know, from the standpoint of not knowing your money, I mean, you know me. I mean, come on now. You know I don't believe that for 1 second. $13 million annually. Lane Kiffin, so you didn't know that, huh? The $13 million annually. You didn't know about the $150,000 for the Rebels' participation in the first round college football playoff game. Increases to $250,000 for participation in quarterfinals. Topped out at $1 million if Ole Miss had won the national championship. That was your contract when you were at Ole Miss. So you knew none of that, okay? You knew none of that, nor do you know that this contract certainly mirrors that at all. Listen, we were born at night, not last night, most of us anyway. That is just absolutely ludicrous. Nobody should believe that. And Lane Kiffin coming out and trying to sell us on that just really, really exposes him for everything that Paul Finebaum, amongst many others, have said about him in terms of him being disingenuous and all of that other stuff. Having said all of that, I don't give a damn. I don't care. What I care about is this. Now you got to win. Now you got to return LSU to prominence. Nick Saban was there for 5 years, won a national championship in 4. Les Miles was there for 12 years, won a national championship in year 3. Ed Orgeron was there for about 4 or 5 years, won a national championship in year 4. You better do it. You better do it because Brian Kelly didn't get it done. You understand? And they booted him out there. Not only did it cost him his job, it cost the AD his job. He had to resign, okay? And then you, Lane Kiffin, you on the phone with that governor, with his crazy self. And the governor sitting there, and what does Lane Kiffin say? It was a very unique conversation. We understand it's different, but it's different in Death Valley. It's different when you're talking about LSU. And you're right, CC. This is the closest he's going to ever get to anything that come close to replicating Alabama, Nick Saban, that kind of thing. You wasn't going to pull that off at Ole Miss, which is why I don't mind him leaving. And if you're Ole Miss, here's my whole thinking, and I know a lot of people disagree with this, but I really, really feel adamant about this. My attitude is contractually. I'm not talking about a promise because we understand we can't rely on Lane Kiffin's promises. We get that part. But contractually, if you were able to pull it off, CC, I'm of the mindset this man coached this team for the last 6 years. Only 3 programs were better over the last 4 in Ohio State, Oregon, and Georgia. That's it, okay, in terms of the amount of games that they won. I got a national championship that I'm after. Now, you Alabama, you LSU, somebody like that, fellas, you tell them to go kick rocks. Shae, you tell them to go kick rocks, okay? But if you Ole Miss, y'all, last time they won a national championship was when John F. Kennedy was president. I wasn't born yet. I mean, they would talk about Marilyn Monroe. That's how long ago that was. That's 60 plus years. You know what I'm doing? I'm like, yo, finish the job. You're going to go out there in the postseason, try to win me a national championship, because I know you're going to recruit anyway. You're going to do it. But damn it, you're going to finish this job, because guess what? Winning a national championship might big up him even more. It ain't like he going to go out there trying to lose intentionally. Those same players, we got a job to finish. I'm incentivized even more to not go out there and get embarrassed, and at least I'm going to get a national championship out of you. That's what I would be doing if I was Ole Miss, only because we're talking about Ole Miss in Oxford, Mississippi. You don't talk about national championships in football when it comes to them for the last 60 plus years. Again, John F. Kennedy was the president. Marilyn Monroe was the modern day Kim Kardashian. And oh, by the way, the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act wasn't even signed into law as of yet. That's how far back we going. Oh, hell yeah, if I could get a national championship out of him, I'm going to do that. Hey, let him go to LSU, but you're going to try to win me this national championship over the next month before you get your behind up out of here. That's what I would have done.
Go ahead, Paul. You can respond. Go ahead.
Yeah, Stephen, I want to say something about what you said, and you make a lot of sense, but I'm going to bring in your favorite coach, and I'm trying not to sound like I'm arguing a case in front of the Supreme Court, but I want to bring Nick Saban into this conversation for a second and go back to 2016. Lane Kiffin was his offensive coordinator. They were playing Washington in the national semifinals. Winner gets Clemson.
That's right.
And Lane Kiffin doesn't really show up for work. He's on the phone in Atlanta, recruiting for Florida Atlantic, a job he had taken 2 or 3 weeks earlier. So I realize that's 9 years ago, but that's the problem with Lane Kiffin. You let him continue to coach Ole Miss, and he has the attention span of a beagle. He would be looking everywhere. He'd be working on the other job, and he'd probably screw up Ole Miss's national championship hunt. They're probably not very good anyway under Pete Golding, but that's the reason why I think they say, we can't trust you, Lane Kiffin. You've been trying to get a job since the day we hired you, and if you'd gone to Alabama, you almost went to Auburn, you would have gone to Florida, you thought about going this year to Florida. You just cannot be trusted. And Stephen, hey, that's really what it comes down to.
Well, a couple of things that I think is very, very important for this audience to know about me and Paul Finebaum. Us arguing before the Supreme Court would not be a bad thing. Let's get that out the way first. It would actually be very entertaining. That's number one. Number two, let's remember, I'm saying CC because I wanted to make sure that I elaborate on this point with you and Shae. I'm talking about getting him contractually to commit. We don't touch anything from Ole Miss. We're not getting any players that we're going to allow to transfer to LSU, nor any coaches. It would have been predicated on those conditions. That's number two. Number three, Paul arguing before the Supreme Court, which is Shae and Chris Canty for the purposes of this moment. Okay, those are the Supreme Court justices right now. We're arguing before them. Let's keep in mind, Paul Finebaum, that when you're talking about Nick Saban, it's the same Nick Saban that also turned around and encouraged them to take the job. That said he should take the job. He should leave. And oh, by the way, he should still be allowed to coach the Ole Miss team through the playoffs. That same Nick Saban who fired him, you understand, 9 years later is supporting him, which means that there is the possibility that change has happened. We all make mistakes. We all have our proclivities and our flaws, and, we learn from them and we move forward. Now, does that mean Lane Kiffin has? Hell no. But again, we're talking about Ole Miss, 1962. You understand? I mean, there wasn't even SUVs back then, if I remember correctly. I don't think there were SUVs. In a long time, man. I mean, if I can squeeze a national championship out of it, I'm taking it.
Yeah, Stephen,
that's all I'm saying.
Stephen, here's the issue that I have with what you're saying about what Ole Miss should do, what athletic director Keith Carter should have allowed Lane Kiffin to do. the who of it all matters. So not just the history with Lane Kiffin as an individual, but the history between Ole Miss and LSU. You're talking about them being neighbors. You're talking about them being direct competitors. We might view LSU as a superior job, as a superior program, but I can promise you the good folks at Oxford, Mississippi don't. And so why would we allow Lane Kiffin to be a walking billboard for LSU football with our postseason when we're talking about hosting maybe the most historic sporting event to happen in the state of Mississippi, which is a home college football playoff game? Why would we trust Lane Kiffin with something that valuable when it's clearly a coach
I understand
that might
and that's
have a different agenda other than winning a national championship?
That's true. They don't have an NFL team. They don't have an NBA.
That's a profound argument, and I'm saying to you, it applies to everybody, but a team that ain't won a national championship since the early 60s. I mean, damn. Desperate times, desperate measures, bro. I want a national championship. And if he delivers me a national championship, yeah, he can go to LSU, but we sitting here as the reigning, defending national champions if he were able to pull that off. That's all I'm saying. But I understand your point. I get it.
Maybe it would guarantee one national championship, or if he stayed, it could have guaranteed multiple. I don't know. All right, coming up.
There's no guarantee.
Thank you, Paul. Well, there's certainly no guarantee now. Thank you, Paul. We appreciate you.